My stepbrother is the definition of evil. He set me up. He framed me. He stole $20,000 from our parents and literally came up with a full-blown plan to pin it on me. And it worked. I got kicked out of my house, and it just got so bad for me. Luckily, one of my buddies was able to take me in for a little bit, but then I found out this about my parents. I've known since the day we met that my stepbrother does not like me one bit. But when he extended a hand forward and tried to do something I've been attempting for years, of course I was happy with it. The only thing I wanted was a brother, so I happily agreed without thinking. And look at what ended up happening. My stepbrother has stabbed me in the back, and there's probably nothing I can do to get out of the situation he put me in. Right now, I have no idea what I can do to get myself out of the problem I'm in. Since I have run out of ideas on what to do, I'm hoping somebody here gives me some good advice, but before that, you'll need to fully understand what's happening and what my stepbrother actually did, so let me explain. I'm Wade. I live with my parents, my mom, my stepdad, and my stepbrother Chris, and before any of this happened, I was very happy. I did, not have the most perfect of life, but I've always been the kind of guy who can be content with what he has. It's maybe because my mom raised me to be like this. Growing up, my dad left us early on to chase a younger bird or something. Honestly, I don't know because Mom never talked about him. But from what I pieced together, something like that happened, and my mom raised me mostly. And I cannot put into words how grateful I am for everything she did for me. She was both of my parents up to a certain point, and she did a great job. After a while of being alone, she found my soon-to-be stepdad and fell in love. I was more than happy for her because she deserved the world. And my stepfather was a really great guy. The only problem I had with him was his son, my stepbrother, because he did not seem like he was fond of both me and my mom. I understood his reservations as he had not gone through the same experiences as me and his mom had actually passed away, so it was hard for him to see my mom as his own. But I did not have to go through something like that because I did not like my biological dad at all. Honestly, a few years in, I started calling my stepfather Dad, and I've thought of him as my own father. Obviously, I had no problem adjusting because I had a good-for-nothing father. So everybody gave Chris a lot of time to adjust, and he especially did not like the fact that we moved into his house. And he made it known that we were not welcome. Everybody was patient with him, and I like to think that I was the one who did the most. Because no matter how much he disapproved of my mom, he essentially did nothing to her except for not speaking to her a lot and not eating dinner sometimes. But I had to take a lot of that hate head on because we were the same age. I would sometimes find my stuff thrown about and my books torn, holes in my new shoes and other stuff like that. But I never once complained because I wanted him to understand that I was part of his family, no matter what. All of this slowed down little by little, and I believed that this was his way of telling me that he was okay with me living there. But he never quite truly saw me as his brother. A few years later, Chris accepted my mom, but he never saw me in the same light. He made me feel that I could never be a part of his family. We had many fights because of this, and as I kept trying to get him to accept me as a brother, but he never did. Years passed, but our relationship remained kind of the same until 2 months ago. Let me make one thing crystal clear. Throughout the years that we had gotten a bit closer, or at least I thought we had, Chris still showed hostility from time to time, but I just assumed that this was a part of his love for me. But 2 months ago, he suddenly changed. He started acting less colder towards me, and it felt like he was just trying to get to know me better, so that we could become brothers. His intentions became clear that day that he apologized to me about some of the things that he did to me. He told me that he felt bad about it, and this told me that he actually wanted the same thing that I did. I was so happy that he was finally understanding how I felt that I never suspected that he had a plan. Honestly, how was I to know that he was planning on framing me by doing this? You see, he had started working on his plan 2 months prior, so I was pretty much done right from the start. And I would say for about a month he buttered me up, slowly getting closer and making me feel like we were becoming brothers. Well, having an actual sibling was all I wanted, so I easily fell for it. Then a few weeks ago, he surprised me by giving me $5,000 and told me to keep it. I was skeptical at first and immediately declined, but he explained that he had won a huge bet and won a large amount of money. So he wanted to share with me and also celebrate. He claimed that he had used the analysis I had shared about a soccer match to win the bet, so he felt like I deserved a part of the win too. When I still refuse to keep the money, he gets very emotional and tells me that I should consider this a repayment of everything that he had destroyed. He said that we were uncountable times where he took my stuff and even my money, and this was just a token of the apology. I got the feeling that he really wanted me to keep the money, and even though I was a bit weary, I took it. I internally decided to keep the money and gave it to him when he needs it. I was sure that in the near future he would be in need of money, or I could just buy a gift or do something like that for him. I don't really want to use it. After about another week, he asked me if I had used any, and when I said no, he told me that we should go out and spend a little. He also made me promise that I would not tell my parents anything about it because they would ask him to save the money and not spend it, and I agreed. I was happily keeping his secret, but I had no idea that it was going to lead to my downfall. So, we spent about $1,000 from the amount he gave me, and he spent the rest himself, and we spent several days partying and doing fun stuff, and I honestly had a great time. And he spent a good amount of money. Strangely, he also kept the receipt, and when I asked, he tells me that he wanted to track how much he was spending. I had already made the mistake of telling our parents that I was hanging out with friends and having a fun time. Just like Chris wanted. I did not mention to them that I had once gone out with Chris. For them, me and Chris had the same relationship we've had for years. Once again, this was a part of the big plan. I then spent another good few days just working and was really thinking about how it was going with Chris, and then everything exploded. Well, yesterday, I went out with a friend to discuss a project we were doing for work, and when I came back, things were not normal at all. Both my parents were mad, especially my mom, and as soon as I reached home, I was greeted with a slap that shook my entire brain. I felt like a grenade had gone off in front of my ears, and my immediate reaction was what happened, and nobody answered. Well, they did not have to answer because as soon as I saw my stepdad talking about the cash my stepbrother gave me, I knew what was going on. He asked me where I had gotten this, and I told the truth. But my mom slapped me again and asked me to stop lying. Her eyes were full of tears as she asked me if she had really raised a liar and a thief. She asked me what she had done wrong for me to do this. I told her I didn't understand and said that this was Chris's money, at which point he came out and asked me to stop lying. It turns out $20,000 had been stolen from our parents, and you can probably imagine what happened. For those who can't, my stepbrother stole the money and did the courtesy of blaming me. Probably just because he hates me. Well, I neither know why he did it nor why he blamed me. I just know that he did both. As soon as I put two and two together and was about to defend myself, my stepbrother pulled out the receipts and showed them to my parents. He told them that I was doing this with the money and probably more. Since I had stupidly told my parents that I was out with friends, they easily believed it and kept asking what I did with the money. Honestly, it was more funny because they kept asking but refused to hear my answer and just got mad at me when I was blaming Chris. He had already told them that he had seen me party to clear himself right from the start. When nothing worked, all I could do was scream at him for backstabbing me, and my mom got so mad that she asked me to go to my room and not come out. Well, that happened last night, and I'm pretty sure they're expecting me to explain things or to tell them the rest of the money is by tomorrow. So obviously things are not looking good for me. Ugh, now you know everything that happened, even though I did not do the crime. I've been caught red-handed. So how do I get out of this? How do I tell them the truth? And mainly, how do I save myself from getting kicked out to the curb? Update number 1. Hey guys, it's been a week since my post and I've officially become homeless. Well, not exactly homeless because I'm staying somewhere, but what I feared did happen and I got kicked out of my house by my own parents. The funniest part about it all was that they did it while telling me why couldn't I have become more like Chris. So, like I had predicted while writing this post that day, as soon as I went down, I got bombarded with questions about why I stole and where the money was. No matter how many times they asked, I kept giving them the same answer, which was that Chris was the one who stole it. And every time I told them about it, they got more and more mad. I kept telling myself that if I kept telling the truth, things would work out for me. But I learned soon enough that life does not treat you right just because you are. You see, my parents probably believed that if they kept asking, I would tell them the absolute truth. But in a few days, they lost confidence in me. 4 days ago, my mother gives me an ultimatum to either tell them the truth and return the money or get kicked out to the streets. I kid you not, it really hurt me when they refused to believe a word that I said. So I tell my mom that she could do what she wanted to. She had tears in her eyes as she kicked me out, and I'm never going to forget the face my stepbrother made. They kicked me out while telling me, why wasn't I more like him? He was delighted seeing me go down, and his image has been burned into my brain. I've moved on in with my friend, Bruce, and his brother. They were kind enough to take me in, and since Bruce was already aware of my situation, they even offered help if I needed it. I really regret falling for my stepbrother's trap, and I wish I would have been smarter. I've been thinking about what I could do, and Bruce and his brother both think that I should pay Chris back for what he did with interest. I believe that with a little time I can still convince my parents, but that has really not been going great as they've refused to even speak to me. I feel like I should have just accepted the blame, as that way, at least, I would have stayed at my house, which would help me to stay closer to Chris. But I'm also confident that I would not really find any proof against Chris that easy, and he would easily turn anything against me. Plus, I have no idea what other things he would blame me for if I stayed, so this might have been both a curse and a blessing at the same dang time. I have now started considering taking revenge, and if I cannot convince my parents, I'm going to take that route. Honestly, Chris deserves worse than anything I can do to him. We're currently brainstorming some ideas, so I would be grateful if you guys could be helpful in that department too. Update number 2. Hey guys, yes, I know, I'm sorry. It's been over a month. And firstly, I want to thank each and every one of you for giving me all the advice that I needed. I saw many people telling me to not focus on revenge, but rather on showing my parents the truth. Honestly, now, I don't think those are two separate options for me. I'm not the type of guy who holds grudges, because if I was, I would never have accepted my stepbrother after everything he did to me growing up. So obviously, I tried to convince my parents, and since that didn't work, I had no other option left. So let me start where I left off. So by the time a week rolled by since my last update, I had already tried numerous times to contact my parents, but I failed. They seriously cut me off and refused to even see my face. They made me mad even more, and what happened the next day cemented the fact that I needed to pay my stepbrother back. When my stepbrother was not home, I showed up, hoping that they would let me explain, but they just threatened to call the police, and this broke my heart. After he had heard about it, my stepbrother sent me photos of him chilling in a club, and this made my blood boil. At this point, I decided that I needed to take the situation into my own hands, so we came up with a plan. I know for sure that my stepbrother smokes marijuana, and I know the place that he buys it from. I've come up with a plan to frame him for taking drugs using Bruce and his brother. So essentially, what I'm going to do is convince my parents that Chris has been taking drugs for some time now, which is going to cause him a lot of problems. He's obviously immediately going to come for help to me, since he knows it can only be me. If it works, then I can use it to manipulate him into telling my parents the truth about the stolen money. Why would he do it, you ask? Well, I'm going to offer telling them the truth about him taking drugs. I'm very sure that he'll choose to be seen as a thief than a drug addict, because of the type of parents that we do have. Obviously, this all depends on the plan working flawlessly, which I doubt that it will, but we're going to try it nonetheless. So, during the past week, I've been following my stepbrother to make sure that our plan works without fail. Bruce and his brother were working on selling marijuana to my stepbrother while making it look like he was buying. Obviously, the photo will not convince my parents. I have another plan for that. But we still need it to be as good as we can make it. I'll let you guys know if it works or if it fails, but please do wish me luck. Update number 3. Hey, guys, bada bing, bada boom, it worked, baby. Both my parents and my stepbrother had fallen for my bait, now it's time to play the endgame. So, it's actually been a few weeks, and it took us a lot of time to get things going. Honestly, the thing that took the longest was getting his schedule, as he would buy pot randomly, but I managed to find a pattern. So, then the day he went out to buy it, I slowed him down using Bruce's car, and he really kept honking when I did not let him overtake the lane. By the time he reached Bruce, his brother had already told the seller that the cops were looking for him and he had closed up shop. When Chris finally showed up, he found Bruce's brother waiting for him. The brother told him that the shop was closed for today and he was selling stuff remotely. Chris did not really care and found it weird that he was acting secretive about selling, and he bought his usual amount and went home while Bruce got the pictures that he obviously needed. So, then it was only a matter of time before opportunity came knocking. The next day, he went out to celebrate a Wednesday for some reason, and it was the perfect time for the next step. Bruce's brother knocked on our door while I slowly snuck in through an open window in my brother's room. I snuck in and planted it exactly where it needed to be and ran out. I honestly felt like Tom Cruise, but I had no skills, and if he had not distracted them, they would have found me immediately. Actually, Bruce's brother was not just there to distract my parents, but was actually there for an important thing. He was actually there to frame my stepbrother as part of our plan. So he went to my parents and told them that he was part of a community that was saving younger people from falling into the world of drugs. He then told them that their son had been pretty active for a while, so they tracked him and were here to inform that the stepbro had gone deep off the edge. Obviously, they found it hard to believe, so he showed them proof of him buying stuff and asked them to check his things. Parents went in and found the drugs immediately, which, as you can probably imagine, was bad for stepbro. Immediately the next day, which was yesterday, my phone started blowing up with his calls and messages, which I ignored for a little while. I wanted to stress him a little bit, after which I picked up and asked him what's going on. He tells me that our parents have stopped speaking to him, and I just laughed at him. He gets mad and tells me that he was done playing games and asked me to meet me the next day, which is today. I've not met him yet, but I'm pretty sure what he is about to ask me. I thought I would have to do this myself, but he just made my life easier. I'll let you guys know what happens next. Final updates. Update number 4. Hey guys, yes, it's me, so this is it. Really, it's been another week and I get straight into what happened. So after my last update, I went to meet my stepbrother and he tells me that my plan had worked. Our parents were mad at him for doing drugs, and Dad almost immediately kicked him out. They've been trying to decide what they're going to do with him, and he's been staying out of their way since they refused to hear him out. I asked him if it felt good when it happened to him. He tried to apologize for doing what he did, and I told him I don't want an apology, and asked him to stop wasting my time. He then came straight up to the point and tells me that he wants me to come clean to my parents about setting him up. I laughed and laughed in his face, and so hard that I recently stopped doing charity, so it's not going to happen, buddy. He remained serious and tells me that in return he was going to tell them the truth about the stolen money. When I asked him why, he said that he would rather they see him as a thief. I didn't immediately accept and acted like I was thinking on it, because if this was a trap, and he told me that he was going to confess first right in front of me. Guys, he sounded genuine when he tells me that, so I asked him for a little bit of time. I went to Bruce's home and celebrated because he had fallen into the trap. The next day I agreed, and he brought me home and convinced our parents that they needed to hear us out. He then told them the entirety of the truth about how he stole the money and what he did with it, and how he framed me. The amount of details he gave, including where the money was kept and stuff, made it impossible not to believe. He also returned the leftover money and a ring that he grabbed mistakenly while taking the money. Our parents were completely shocked, and I could see how bad they were feeling for what they did to me, especially my mom. Then stepbrother told them that this was not the end and that I also had something to share with them. I had a serious expression as I looked at him and apologized to him, and there was this split second where he fully believed that I was going to start telling the truth like he did. But I stabbed him right there in the back and told my parents that he tried to blackmail me into saving him by telling them the truth and making me lie by saying that I framed him. When I tell you Chris's whole face went red, I seriously mean he was mad. I was trying my hardest not to crack a smile while my parents burst over to him, trying to frame me twice. See, they were already feeling bad about me, and as soon as they heard what I said, they jumped on him. He didn't get a chance to even defend himself or say that I betrayed him. His eyes said it all, and I just played the hurt, sad brother part. Stepdad dragged him out of the house and slapped him so hard that he fell on the ground and started crying and apologizing. He kept asking me to tell them the truth. But guys, I stayed silent. Then stepfather warned him to never show his face here ever again and said that he was a disgrace of a son. Both of them immediately cut him off and have spent the past few days apologizing to me. Every day. I have forgiven them as I understood how it looked, but my parents felt they made a huge mistake and have been trying to make it up to me. Chris has been messaging me every day apologizing and asking me to hold up my end of the bargain, and I just ignore his messages. I was patient with him for years, but now I know for sure he's never going to become my brother. So I would rather have him out of the family, and he fully deserves it. I do feel a little bit bad, but I can now move on.